Tēnā koutou katoa and welcome. My name is Jo Bailey. I recently graduated from the Western Sydney University in Australia, although I am a New Zealand citizen and I reside in New Zealand. This is an overview of my presentation today. I'm just going to focus on my study's findings, which were identified under a model of connections and care. The model comprises the major aspects that emerged of how young people were influenced, felt and acted when they shared their stories of environmental concerns and activism. The central aim of the study was to explore whether young New Zealanders might be changing the way they think about consumption and environmental issues. The study has been undertaken using a methodology created by Glasser and Strauss, known as grounded theory, due to the emergent and inductive nature of the topic. The data collection included qualitative and quantitative methods comprising an online questionnaire, in-depth interviews with 11 participants and a focus group meeting. As mentioned at the start of this presentation, my focus is going to be on the findings of the study. It was evidence from the data that rather than forming discrete categories, there were emergent themes which became interconnected, like interlocking jigsaw puzzles. They created a complete picture when fitted together. The participants' developmental progressively spiraled towards these interconnected domains of influential people and activities, effective responses and increasing participant actions, building new insights and capacities with each term. This model explains how influences surrounding the young people generated affections that drove their motivation to act. I will now discuss the model in more detail. For all participants, their parents were their earliest and most prominent influence, modelling conservation values of care for the environment and underpinning this with their love of the outdoors. From an early age, family holidays and regular outdoor activities such as tramping, which is what New Zealanders call or refer to their hiking, as well as camping activities, immerse these young people in nature. Experiencing nature over a period of time is thought to influence how a person continues to care for the nature across their lifespan. Extensive research on how and why people connect with nature identifies the formative role of parents as being the most influential to facilitate this connection. Supporting their environmental actions, the parents often engaged the young people in wider discussions. This was usually around the dinner table at night, and they expressed the willingness of their parents to engage them in often difficult conversations around climate change. It was through these conversations and actions that that they were able to develop their environmental values and action and progress their ecological worldviews that in turn has helped them interpret connections between environmental destruction and consumer behaviour. Building on these concepts, some participants as children joined environmental organisations where, as we know, NGOs in this space provide a provision of creative and active learning spaces. The experimental learning and opportunities offered through these groups and settings can become transformational as they can actively engage young people in learning through evaluating, problem solving and taking action within determined situations. Specific learning and promoted actions as part of making a difference, such as beach cleanups or gully restoration, making the activities responsive to the young person's environmental concerns. As they matured, they joined national and international environmental groups such as 350.org, Greenpeace and Action Station. These allowed the young people to broaden and deepen their understanding of environmental issues, thus enabling them to act in ways of that developed that ethos of environmental activism. These were also places where they became inspired through meeting different role models from different walks of life who encouraged them to think differently and take new actions towards environmental care and protection. As teenagers, other key experience sensitized their environmental concern. One was the documentary film An Inconvenient Truth. It really resonated with them as it created an aha moment and advanced their understanding of climate change through messages of easy to understand scientific terms. They were non-emotive information, and there was clear actions and messages of hope within that documentary. That was at least 8 years ago that they'd seen that, and they still acknowledge that as an influence on them. And but now, we've got more social media networks such as Facebook, and these have diversified opportunities to access a wide range of information sources now relating to environmental issues for young people. In contrast to other studies, peers, friends, or school-based environmental education was not evidence as influences on these young people's views. Youth activist movements such as School Strike for Climate, 350.org, or Action Station are more prominent now than when the participants were teenagers. So there was limited presence of these organisations during the formative years, and it meant that they had fewer opportunities to identify and connect with like-minded people of similar age. Environmental studies cite education as a critical factor for developing ecological views, behaviour and actions. And learning is considered a way of raising awareness of developing knowledge around concerns, and which can lead to personal and behavioural change. The participants in this study were clear that they had not experienced any meaningful formal environmental education within a school setting. This seems unlikely given the environmental school presence within New Zealand schools during the early 1990s. This lack of awareness of environmental education within the school setting by these young people who hold substantial environmental mindsets reinforces the need for a change in education on environmental and sustainability. The young people did identify education within a tertiary setting as being influential because of the variety of learning experiences to engage with other people as well as activities. Clearly, the young people were maturing emotionally and were beginning to critically question and challenge how dominant systems, such as their perception of current political and economic models, were failing to mitigate environmental issues like climate change. The influence of affects, feelings and emotions emerged strongly throughout the participants' narratives. When confronted with different situations, many of the young people expressed how feelings had supported their processing of what was happening around them. Feelings became part of their sense-making and thereafter the decisions that they made. A person's emotions are self-related and individual, making them an important aspect of determining human agency and social interactions within communities and societies. Having a sense of self might better build and equip a person to deal with their own emotions in response to long-term effects of climate change and extreme weather events. Depending on the situation, positive and negative effects can work in unison to motivate people into taking action. This was apparent with these young people, as their feelings of frustration and urgency had at times spurred them into action. When effects are positioned between a person's understanding of a situation and their actions, feelings become more plausible as a means of understanding why people act. When participants spoke about their actions, they often framed the action in response to how they were feeling. If they were feeling positive, they were more likely to engage in action. In contrast, if they were feeling negative affects, then they would be less inclined to act and be more inclined to take a self-protective standpoint. For many of the participants, understanding or undertaking actions became a stimulus for building personal resilience, and especially when feeling discouraged by climate change deniers. This became an unconscious way to counteract negative effects, in particular when confronted by environmental concerns and changes. When participants were faced with deniers, this or people who were reluctant to act, they felt frustrated and discouraged, but this made them more inclined to act on their own environmental concerns, whereas when they had feelings of hopelessness, often considering their future against the backdrop of environmental climate change, this negative effect generated little motivation to act. Feelings of guilt were common negative effectors across many participants' narratives, especially responding to their perceived lack of action and when making consuming decisions. Feelings of guilt, failing to do good, were common across all the participants' narratives, especially when balancing ethical consumption choices against budgetary restraints. Guilty feelings activated deep contemplation about their immediate actions and made them reflective of future actions. When they talked about fear, it was in response to social media, fake news, and this narrative of fear usually propelled them into acting with agency. Positive emotions such as hope and encouragement were considered within the field of sustainability, as these are likely to underpin and promote positive pro-environmental behaviour. Feeling hope was also critical and can signify that people believe that they have control over their futures, thus making them more inclined to participate in actions. Feeling a sense of agency was frequently raised by the participants when they shared their experiences, and also agency initiated a person's worldview, and they were more likely to act. Feelings of love were also present. This was apparent under the premise of caring when the participants talked about their environmental experiences and activities. It was often associated with special places, and they acted upon their feelings of love and care rather than principles of logic and rational evidence commonly present within the culture of developed societies. The young people's feelings guided and underpinned their decisions and action towards their consuming and ecological conservation actions. The worldviews have been shaped by values, feelings, and felt experience, and when combined together, these have determined their actions in response to ecological and consumer concerns. Influences and feelings are located at the core of their actions, responding to their observations of others' actions together with negative and positive effects framed and determine their own actions. They all acted differently to the dominant social culture, but underpinning their actions across them all, there were common values, including humanity, environmentalism, social justice, equality, and community-mindedness. Engelhardt refers to these values as being materialistic, where people place value on the quality of life rather than wealth, economic and physical security. People who hold post-materialistic values are more likely to demonstrate pro-environmental behaviour. High-impact actions demonstrated by these young people were such as eating less meat, reducing transport emissions, and buying local. These formed aspects of the young people's daily lives, as did recycling and reusing activities. But as we know, these actions will not be enough to reduce global emissions unless globally the vast majority of citizens embrace them. The participants talked about the complexity of trying to make what they considered the right consuming choices when faced with budgetary constraints whilst balancing environmental and ethical concerns. These young people were consumers, but they were also active, ecologically conscious global citizens. They considered how their actions had consequences for the planet, for others, rather than just consuming for self-interest. The participants did not consider themselves as environmental activists, strangely enough. They thought of themselves more as just people with concerns, and they did a lot of digital activism, clickism, and they felt that that was contributing towards their actions if they couldn't get and do them at the grassroots level of hands-on actions. Prominent over recent years has been the growth of social movements calling for action on the environment, and this they also pointed to was the actions of a single girl protesting outside her school or a handful of protesters occupying a park. These actions were not lost on the young people and who participated in this study, as they realised that change through actions comes in different shapes and forms and platforms, and this made them even more determined to join in what's happening globally. The concept model illustrates how the major categories were connected. The model seeks to visually present a picture of how the contribution of many dimensions over the young people's development has shaped the world in which they live in. The study revealed that the participants were painfully aware that it was up to them to try and create a better world for their future. They also held ecological worldviews whilst living within the dominant advanced capitalistic system, demonstrating that culture transformation is possible. As early change makers, the participants recognised that change was needed, and they went about changing the way they were living and encouraging others. Holding ecological worldviews has underpinned many of the participants' understandings of how human actions and inaction were connected within a systemic context. They recognise the impact of systems in their lives and how pushing against the dominant social system of consumerism has at times had personal and structural repercussions. Viewing systems as interconnected and dynamic is not uncommon for those who hold ecological worldviews, and learning to see ecological interconnections, including system impacts of pro-consumerist policies and actions, provides insights into ecological issues. This helps to build a framework for challenging the continued escalation of activities that induce environmental change. Seeing relationships across multiple systems was apparent with the young people in this study, as they demonstrated a systems thinking perspective as part of their problem solving. System thinkers frequently demonstrate strong ecological worldviews, environmental values, and a willingness to engage in pro-environmental actions and intentions. The young people in this study question the effectiveness of existing central and local government policies and actions for mitigating climate change, often feeling alone, unheard, and disconnected from the dominant social culture. They pursued individual and collective actions in response. Finally, the young people in this study have shown themselves to be active global citizens championing ecological worldviews and taking action informed by their values. Living within dynamic systems where dominant culture embraces neoliberal models has meant going up against conflicting values and worldviews. However, this demonstrates their ecological conviction and determination to live their beliefs. The young people's awareness of global ecological destruction, together with their actions and worldviews, demonstrate it is possible to shift towards a life-sustaining society within the dominant paradigm. This aligns with the views of scholars who argue that transformational change in the form of activism, structural change, and shifting worldviews is needed for a social change towards life-sustaining systems. Building a culture of ecological citizenship is a way to progress this change, as the narratives of these young people revealed. And thank you for your time today. If you're interested in reading my thesis, here is the link through Research Direct, or please contact me if you have any questions. Kia ora, thank you.